Introducing you to people across North Carolina and around the world who put their Catholic faith into action. This is FaithWorks on Catholic 540 AM Divine Mercy Radio. Now, here's your host for FaithWorks, Ellen White.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. Our show highlights individuals through God's grace who put their faith into action daily. Amazing people who have an interesting, sometimes overlooked impact on our Catholic faith. On FaithWorks, we share their stories. I'm your host, Ellen White. Before we begin today's program, we want to offer a brief note to our listeners. Today's conversation will address sensitive topics related to abortion and personal conversion. While this discussion is important and life-affirming, parents may wish to use discretion when listening with young children. Today, we're joined by a powerful and deeply moving witness. Dr. Kathi Aultman is a physician and former abortion provider whose life and career were transformed through a profound encounter with truth, conscience, and faith. Her journey from participating in abortion to becoming a pro-life advocate speaks not only to the dignity of human life, but also to the depth of God's mercy and the possibility of redemption. We're grateful to welcome Dr. Aultman to the program today to share her story and the work she is doing now in service of life. Hello, Dr. Aultman. Thank you so much.
Hello, Ellen. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's such an honor. Okay, so why don't we start with your background? Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your faith upbringing, and what led you to pursue medicine.
So I'm actually a Methodist preacher's kid, and although I was born in Pennsylvania, I grew up in New Jersey, and we moved from parsonage to parsonage and lived in a fishbowl. And I was the kind of kid who I would volunteer to clean my dad's fish when he caught them because I wanted to see the insides. And so
that's great.
So I had this desire to do stuff like that even as a little kid. And I would dissect the eyeball so I could find the lens. And I just thought all of that was so interesting. And then I had an aunt who was the first female bioengineer. And we were visiting them, and she took us to her lab. And I decided at that point I wanted to be a scientist. I think I was in the 4th grade. Yeah.
What a great experience. And knowing even early on with the fish that it was something that was intriguing to you. That's great. All right. And so tell us what drew you specifically to obstetrics and gynecology, Dr. Aultman.
Well, I was somewhat limited because I was married to a Navy guy stationed in Jacksonville. And so I had to do a residency program when we were living in Orange Park. So I had to do a residency program that was provided through the University Hospital system, which was actually at that time part of the University of Florida. And so it was either internal medicine, pediatrics, I think orthopedics, or OBGYN. And I liked OBGYN because you got to do so many different things. You got to deliver babies, you got to do surgery, and you got to do healthy women checks. And unlike internal medicine where people were throwing up and getting so sick, most women coming in for their GYN exams, they took a shower, they shaved their legs. We didn't have any icky stuff going on. Now, when you deliver babies, it gets a little bloody and wet, but that's different.
Yeah, right. It's a new life that's coming into the world. Mm-hmm. Right. So you did you go? I'm trying to get a context of your situation when you were going to medical school. So you were already married. Did you have children at that point?
No, and this is sort of a sad part of my story. I knew that I was going to marry this man. He had already proposed. And I had gone down, he convinced me to come down to Florida where he lived the summer before I started medical school. And we were planning to get married that next year. And I got pregnant. And I chose to have an abortion because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to be a doctor. I was afraid that our marriage would end in divorce because we had to get married. And I was afraid of what people would think of me. And later, when I went to medical school, I met a whole bunch of women who had had their children first and then went to medical school, which was very sad for me. And we ended up with a divorce later. And I realized that the people that really cared about me would have supported me. So none of my reasons were valid.
Right. Well, and I want to talk about your medical career, Dr. Aultman. How did you understand abortion, I guess, maybe in conjunction with your own experience with your abortion, professionally and morally? What did you think about it?
Well, I think that my own experience definitely colored my opinion. And by the time I got to my residency program, I truly believed that abortion was a woman's right and that no woman should have to have a child she didn't want, that we shouldn't bring unwanted children into the world to be neglected and abused. I mean, I believe the whole line.
Right.
And I didn't see the fetus or the unborn child as a human being. I don't know if everyone realizes this, but all OBGYNs have to learn how to do abortions unless they opt out using the conscience clause. Now, I thought that abortion was a good thing, and I thought I'd be helping women, so I did not opt out. But several of my male colleagues did.
I'm curious, Dr. Aultman, did you have any tension internally? Any thoughts, anything, especially in light of the fact that your father was a minister in what you grew up with? Did you have any thoughts of that when you were doing this in medical school?
The only actually it was in residency, but the only time that I had any reservations was during my neonatal intensive care unit rotation. And I realized that I was trying to save babies the same gestational age as ones that we were doing abortions on. And,
interesting.
But we're taught to compartmentalize. And I shoved it into the back of my brain and didn't think about it.
Okay. So it was just, you compartmentalized it. So it didn't affect you emotionally or spiritually at all. It was just something that was done, and it was part of your practice as a physician or, in residency.
Right. And now I have to talk about the spiritual part. One bad thing about growing up as a preacher's kid is you get to see the inner workings of everything. And by the time I left home, I had become an atheist. I knew about God, but I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know God, and I wanted to, but seemed like I couldn't find him. And so by the time I got to college, I was an atheist and didn't believe at all. I thought religion was the opiate of the people.
Well, and I want you to expound on that a little bit, Dr. Aultman. What do you mean because you saw the inner workings of? So, yeah, go ahead.
The way that people treated my father and the way they treated each other. Yeah. It was very non-Christian.
Right. I get it. But I'm certainly you encountered people that were not that way, that were supporting your father, or maybe you weren't able to see it. I don't know. I have a tendency to be more optimistic.
No, we did have people, who supported us. There were always families that were very supportive. but it was the other ones that I just thought, if they were Christians, they wouldn't act like this. And it just was kind of a slow erosion, I guess.
Yeah. And I find it interesting, too, that you kind of an unsettling moment for you is when you recognized that the babies that you were saving were the same gestational age of the babies that you were aborting. Were there any other unsettling moments for you that struck home?
Not really,
No.
Sadly.
Okay.
Not really. No.
How did the culture within the medical community, doctor, influence how abortion was discussed or justified, would you say? I'm curious.
Well, so I only did abortions during my residency program.
Okay.
And so our full sphere was our attendings and other students. And I don't know that it was really discussed a lot. It was just part of the program. Although I did go outside of the program to learn how to do the second trimester D&E abortions, or what we know as dismemberment abortions, because I was so gung-ho and I, really wanted to help women. And instead of getting a job, we all got jobs moonlighting because you don't make hardly anything as a resident. And so we would get an extra job. And several of the guys got jobs in the emergency room. I got a job in an abortion clinic because, one, I thought I'd be helping women, and you can make a little bit more money that way too. So
is that what you ended up doing your career in, was providing abortion? And if so, was it a clinic setting? Paint the picture for our listeners, doctor.
Okay. So I only did it during my residency program. Okay. And so we did abortions as part of our program. And then I got a job moonlighting at a clinic in Gainesville, doing abortions mainly on college kids. And what happened was, and what changed my mind, I think, was I got pregnant, and I was so gung-ho, I continued to do abortions even though I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see any problem with that because my baby was wanted. Their baby wasn't. They had the right to abort their baby. I wanted to keep mine. I didn't see any problem with that. And however, after my delivery, when I went back to the clinic at 6 weeks, something had changed. And there were 3 patients that I ran into that changed my mind. And the first one, I realized I had done like 4 abortions on this girl, and I hadn't been doing them that long. So I went to the clinic director and I said, I don't want to do this abortion. She's using it as birth control. And she said, well, I'm sorry, but that's her right. And you don't have any say in it, and you need to do the abortion. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, but I'm the one doing the killing. So something had already changed in my mind. Then another patient came in with her girlfriend. And after the procedure, the girlfriend said, do you want to see the tissue? Because sometimes they did, and I would show them. And she said, no, I just want to kill it. And I thought, what did this baby ever do to you? It wasn't the baby's fault. And then the last patient of the day was an older woman who had, she already had 4 children. She and her husband felt that they couldn't afford another one, and so she was having the abortion. She cried the entire time she was there. Mm-hmm. And after that, I could no longer do abortions. I couldn't kill babies just because they weren't wanted. The sad thing was that I still strongly believed in abortion, and I continued to refer for abortion. And that attitude continued even after I graduated and became a Christian. And it didn't change till a year or 2 later.
Okay, so a year or 2 later is when things start. Now, what was it a year or 2 later that prompted this change in you?
So I had I started going to church. I was teaching nobody else would do it, so I ended up teaching the little kids a little Bible class while the parents were in the midweek service.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the children was Down's syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the girls, her mom was unwed, and I thought, gosh, if their parents had made a different decision, these precious little kids wouldn't be here, and they were so precious. And then I had joined a Christian singles group, and they had accepted me, even knowing what my position was.
Mm-hmm.
And after we had a relationship, one of the guys came up to me one day and he said, Kathi, I know you feel strongly about abortion, but would you read this article? And it was an article that compared abortion to the Holocaust. And my father was with a unit that he was an observer when the first concentration camp was liberated during World War II.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I grew up with all those pictures and stories, and I never could understand how the German doctors could do what they did until I thought back on what I had been doing, and I realized that just as they did not consider their victims as human beings, I didn't consider my victims as human beings. And that's when I suddenly realized that I was a mass murderer. And that was devastating.
Wow. I mean, there's so many things that I'd like to point out in this conversation your experiences at the Sunday school class with these precious kids. And, I have dear friends that have Down's syndrome children that always have a smile on their face. And I like to refer to them as angels on earth. They love so deeply. It's written all over them. But also, having friendships, having encounters with people, and you develop this friendship before they start sharing with you where they want to help you. And, with this particular article on how abortion is like the Holocaust. Did this friend know about your background with your father that shared this article with you? No. See, another incident go ahead.
Yeah. But he just, they had all just accepted me unconditionally. And that was what it took, was that unconditional acceptance. Mm-hmm. And because then they had a basis to be able to approach me and say, would you look at this? Would you consider this? They didn't come at me, preaching at me or, berating me,
right.
They approached me with love and, compassion.
How long did it take you before you started to go through this transformation? Walk us through your experiences during this time and going forward.
Well, it was immediate. I realized at that point, that I was a murderer. A friend of mine, pastor's wife, gave me Susan Stafford Rue's book, Will I Cry Tomorrow, which is a book on post-abortal syndrome, and I read that. I had another friend who was a counselor at the Francis and Judith McNutt Christian Healing Center, and she said, would you come up with me and let me pray with you? And I said, sure. So I went up there and I sat down, and she started praying in tongues. And I immediately found myself at the feet of Jesus, and I was afraid to look up. So all I saw was his gown and his feet. But he said to me, "Are you more powerful than I am? Are you more important than I am? That I can forgive you and you cannot forgive yourself?" And I said, "No." And then she said, "Do you want to see your child?" And I said, "Yes." And I looked to the side, and there was this field, and I saw this little boy running through the field, and he turned his head and looked at me and said, Mommy, I forgive you.
Mm.
And talk about crying your eyes out. I cried my eyes out.
Yeah.
But I guess God wanted to use me right away, because that basic, usually you need to go through counseling and all this stuff to get through it. And, but that week I got an email asking for volunteers to go to Washington to testify in partial birth abortion. And I had told God, I'll do whatever you want. Now I didn't want to have anything to do with abortion. I wanted to get as far away from that as I could.
Right.
But that's, I got this email. I answered it. I said, I'll go. It turned out they had enough people for that, but it opened the floodgates, and I found myself testifying throughout the country, both in front of legislatures and then also in courts, defending bans that were passed. And so it was just sort of an immediate jumping into the fire.
Yes. And even though you wanted to, so it makes me think of Romans 8:28, Dr. Aultman. That's a scripture verse that I like to refer to and reflect on a lot. All things work for good for those that love the Lord and live according to his purposes. So, I mean, he's taken this experience that you had and turning it into something beautiful by your witness and what you're sharing. All right. If you're just tuning in, this is Ellen White with FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. And today I'm joined by Dr. Kathi Aultman, a physician and former abortion provider who now speaks and works as a pro-life advocate. She's sharing her powerful story of conversion healing and the work she continues to do in the service of life. We are so grateful for our show's sponsor, Thales College. I've got so many questions. Okay. So, it would behoove me not to mention, we have Project Rachel here in our diocese that is a post-abortive healing ministry that continues to work with men and women that are post-abortive. So if you're tuning in and you're hearing this for the first time, I highly recommend that you check them out, either for yourself or for someone that you know that needs post-abortive healing. Because as Dr. Aultman just alluded to, this kind of healing and experiencing God's mercy is so profound. All right. So you started speaking around the country, and you made a comment about, so what was it that you said that there were laws that were being passed? Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So the partial birth abortion, and this is where you don't want little children listening.
Right.
So in the partial birth abortion, the baby is delivered breech, all except the head, and this is later term babies. And then they would make an incision in the back of the neck into the skull, take out the brains, and deliver the baby the rest of the way. So horrific procedure, which was legal at the time. And they were trying to pass a national law banning it. And so all of the times I went and testified, I was testifying in state after state that were trying to ban this procedure, and then also ended up testifying, in Washington. And finally this ban was passed. And then I kind of just went back to doing my practice.
Okay.
And later things changed, but at that point, I just kind of went back to normal. But we had to also defend the bill in the state courts, because if it was passed, then immediately Planned Parenthood would file suit to enjoin it and stop it, and then we'd have to go to court.
It's a constant uphill battle, it seems like. I feel like we make inroads, and then you hear about something else that's happened with Planned Parenthood, and they've gotten some more funding and they're able to do something else. And, now with the abortion pill, but before I jump into that, I want you to, have you been following, how do you live your life, Dr. Aultman? Do you follow the different laws that are going on in the different states? Do you stay active in the legislative end? How do you do this? What do you do for pro-life advocacy?
Okay. So I ended up I had to retire suddenly. I was just doing my OBGYN practice. Okay. And but then in 2013, I started becoming allergic to everything, my gloves, my gown, my patients, people's clothing, everything. And I had to suddenly stop practice in 2014 and ended up having to stay at home, not being around people, not being around fragrances and clothing for about 1.5 years. And at that point, I prayed. I said, Lord, please let me still do something important, because my thought had always been that when I retired, I would join mercy ships or do some other mission work, because I had worked with them over the years. And I was just feeling very discouraged. Well, it turned out that there was a congresswoman who'd been trying to reach me. And that same week that I prayed that, I got a call asking if I would go to Washington and testify on the heartbeat bill. So I did. And again, that sort of opened the floodgates. I ended up testifying throughout the country, and then eventually was asked by the Charlotte Lozier Institute, which is the education and research arm of Susan B. Anthony List. And so it took me about 6 months to say yes to them, because I was afraid I was already so busy. Then I'd be super busy. And I had told God, okay, you don't have to prove to me each time that that I should do this. I said, I will just accept all comers. And if you don't want me to do it, close the door.
Oh, yes.
And so I was really afraid I'd be overwhelmed. But I finally did join Charlotte Lozier, which was actually a very good thing. Right before COVID, I was adding up my mileage to the airport, and I realized that I was going to the airport on an average of every 2 weeks.
Wow.
But when COVID hit, obviously that all shut down. But it gave me the opportunity to work with some other colleagues, and we wrote 2 papers on the abortion pill. And then I ended up doing some testifying on Zoom, which was really, really interesting. And I have just continued to speak, and more speaking lately than testifying. But it's really been an amazing ride, and I would encourage people to, just pray and see what God wants them to do, and then just have the courage to take that first baby step. You don't have to figure it out. You just start, and it's amazing how God will direct you. And the more you say yes, the more He opens up for you.
So, yes. Dr. Aultman, I have yes, it is incredibly exciting. And it's definitely an adventure with the Lord. But I love that you said, Lord, I'm willing to do whatever it is that you want me to. I will do it. If somebody comes asking, I'm going to do it unless you close the door. And I have a dear friend that is the same way. And to see the Lord work in his life, and he's so willing. I love that trust and that approach. Now I'm curious, Dr. Aultman, transitioning from, testifying before Congress, I want to know who that congresswoman was too. Who was she that reached out to you? Do you remember?
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that I've forgotten her name. I should know her name.
That's all right.
But she was the one who first brought the national bill, heartbeat bill.
Okay. I'll have to look that up and see, because, we need to pray for and support these congressmen and women and representatives that stand against the tide and are courageous in this fight. So you transitioned from testifying in Congress and to speaking. What are your topics that you speak about now, Doctor?
So it's mainly two things. One is my testimony.
Okay.
And then the other thing, this is my favorite thing, is I speak at colleges. Every year, I think for the last 3 or 4 years, I've spoken at the Cardinal O'Connor Conference for Life in Washington. That's the day after the March for Life.
Oh, okay.
And I have a PowerPoint presentation where I show videos of little babies actually in the womb. They use a technique called amnioscopy, where they put a little scope up through the cervix, and you can look through the thin membrane and see the baby inside. Wow. At various gestational ages. So I took little video clips, and then I show them where each type of abortion is done, including the, quote, morning after pill, which is an abortifacient most of the time, or much of the time. And then I also explain and show animations of the different abortion procedures. And then I also show pictures of actual victims of each of these procedures and some pictures of people that have survived those procedures. So it's sort of the whole thing.
I've interviewed a young woman in the past. It's been several years, and she's a survivor of abortion. And you know what? You bring up the term abortifacient, Dr. Aultman. If you wouldn't mind, why don't you explain what that is and also relate that to contraception?
Okay. So an abortifacient is anything that causes an abortion. And I was sort of shocked when I was doing the research for this talk that on the website for the morning after pill, they said it is not an abortifacient. And I thought, how can they say that? You know, it works in two ways. One way is to prevent ovulation, which if it does that and there's no fertilization, it's not an abortifacient. But it also works by preventing implantation. And implantation is when the several-celled embryo burrows into the endometrium, and that's the implantation site. And so if it prevents that, and then that little embryo dies, then that's an abortion, and that's an abortifacient. So I couldn't figure out why they could say that until I realized that years ago, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, who are very rabidly pro-abortion, they changed the definition of conception. And so you should be careful when you're speaking. You should really never use the word conception. You should always use the word fertilization, because we consider, and 50% of doctors assume this, that conception is synonymous with fertilization. When the egg and sperm meet, that's when a new life is formed. So that we consider that conception. ACOG changed the definition to implantation. And so if there's no pregnancy, there's no conception, then there's no abortion. So that's why they can say it's not an abortifacient.
They changed the terms. Isn't that how it's usually done? Exactly. Wow. Okay. And use the term fertilization. That would be the better way to refer to this.
It is. And I know religiously, you know, we speak about conception, but it actually is better to either use both terms or clarify it. You know, when I say conception, I mean, you know, same as fertilization.
Right.
But I think it's important that people know that definition was changed.
And I didn't know that about the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, that they're pro-abortion. Wow.
They're
pretty radical. Okay. All right. We've got just about 10 minutes left, Dr. Aultman, and I would like to just kind of finish up this segment on your new mission and then direct our attention to listeners that might be tuning in, and then have some closing reflection. So what has surprised you the most about this new direction for you and research with the Charlotte Lozier Institute and speaking?
I'm not, well, I wouldn't say surprising, but the thing that struck me is it's been a real faith builder, because God has either enabled me to do things that I didn't think I could do, or he's closed the door, and he's never put me in a position where I felt I was in the middle of doing something that I couldn't do, that I shouldn't be doing. And so that has been huge, that faith building aspect of it.
Relying on him. That's fantastic. All right. So what would you say to medical professionals who feel trapped in abortion work but don't see a way out?
No, there's always a way out. You just say no. For those who are obstetricians, gynecologists, they just stop seeing patients that want abortions, and they now hopefully they won't just refer them away, but they can say, I'm sorry, I don't do this. And I will say to all the women out there, one thing that also kind of put a little chink in my armor was I had two young women who I had treated, for several years for their GYN needs, and they got pregnant. I think there were two of them. And after they got pregnant, they asked me my view on abortion. And I told them, and this was when I still believed in abortion. And both of them at different times said to me, I'm sorry, I love you, you're a great gynecologist, but I can't see someone for my pregnancy who believes in abortion, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave you. And that sort of kind of made me think. And I thought, gosh, I'm surprised at that they would feel so strongly. And the other thing that happened was during my practice, I realized that I had all these young women who were, had these unplanned pregnancies, but were doing really well. And as opposed to these young women who are having abortions, and they were coming in with psychological problems and the physical problems associated with having had an abortion. And that didn't track with the line that the feminist rhetoric that I had, believed took line and sinker. And that also, this was all prior to my reading that article, and all things that kind of started chipping away at my armor.
Yes, the strength that we supposedly have, little by little. Okay, so, and I touched on this a little bit already, Dr. Aultman, but what message do you have for women who have experienced abortion and carry regret or pain?
If God can forgive me, he can forgive you. But it truly is important to get some kind of counseling. I needed God to tell me he forgave me. And you need to know that you are forgiven in order to move forward. And then, I love that scripture that he restores what the locusts have eaten. And, your life can be restored, and you may or may not end up in pro-life work. He may have something else for you, but until you're healed, it's very difficult to freely move into that. You need to be whole for God to really use you. And in order to be whole, you need to feel forgiven.
Wow, we need to feel forgiven. And something else that's really resonated with me, Dr. Aultman, in talking to you today is, sometimes as lay people, we think that, physicians or other people in authority know better than we do. But, look at the experience with these two young women that said that they could no longer be treated by you because of your views on abortion. It's an opportunity for us to evangelize the people that we encounter when we think that they might not even be listening, but they really are. All right. So how can we better support life-affirming medicine and women in crisis pregnancies, Dr. Aultman?
Well, one is support crisis pregnancy centers. They are amazing. They've taken such a bad rap lately. But they, that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
We have to, if we're going to say you shouldn't have an abortion, well, we need to provide things so that they don't feel they have to have an abortion. A lot of women have abortions because they just don't think they could do it, and we need, I'm so thankful to live in Florida, where our governor has poured millions into support, shoring up pregnancy centers and providing programs for young families. And that's what we need to do, is we need to support the family, not just, pregnant women, single pregnant women, but all pregnant women, all families, because that's the basis of our society. If our families crumble, our whole society crumbles, and we've been seeing that.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I'm just, come on, guys. We need to build the community. And what better way to do that than with young families with babies or single women that are pregnant that don't really have any support? I just think it'd be so much fun. All right. So
and I think
go ahead.
And I think it's critical, that's something anybody can do.
Absolutely.
If you know a young mother, ask her, can I come do your dishes? Can I do your laundry? Can I take the baby for a while you just relax? There's all kinds of support that you can give without doing some major heroic thing, but that is heroic.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's this inclination or idea that we need to go to a pregnancy resource center and volunteer there a certain number of hours, and I'm not saying that that's bad necessarily. And if you're called to that, certainly do it. But, we can do it on a more personal level and inviting people in. That's well said, Dr. Aultman. All right. So I want to look back just a little bit. How do you now understand mercy, forgiveness, and redemption?
It's just something that's completely overwhelming. And I think through all of this, I've realized how good our God is. He is so good and so loving. And the problem is that we don't understand the depth of his love, the depth of his mercy. And when we do, I think it just, our lives are flooded with light, and we can be loving and merciful to other people. But I think that's also why it's so important to read the Bible, to be in a faith community, to see that in action. And, as a Catholic, and this is a Catholic radio station, receiving the sacraments to strengthen us regularly, it's incredibly helpful to actually receive Christ. All right. So what gives you hope when you look at the future of the pro-life movement, Dr. Aultman? I spoke at the Rose Dinner, which is the dinner after the March for Life. And when I went there, I was amazed. It was as if I was looking at a diamond. I was wandering around, going to all these different tables, talking to all these people, and each one had a different ministry. It was like the facets of a diamond. And that's where my hope comes, is from the fact that God is touching the hearts of all these different people in all these different ways, meeting all the needs. And my hope comes from the fact that we have a good and and loving God, because you can get very discouraged just looking at what's happening in the moment. And anything is possible with God. I have to tell you that right before the partial birth abortion ban was passed, I had given up. I thought they are never going to pass it. Every time, I'd speak before a legislature that wouldn't pass. I'd go to court for one that did, it'd be struck down. And I just finally was terribly, terribly discouraged. And then all of a sudden I hear, it was passed. So don't get discouraged. We serve a mighty God, and that's where my hope and my faith comes from.
Fantastic. Wonderful thing to leave this on. And also, Dr. Aultman, I would love to have you back to talk about, without getting discouraged, about the abortion pill, methotrexate, and the strides that we're making in that area with progesterone, and actually the North Carolina doctor that discovered that. So I would love to talk to you about that and different research that you've done in that area with the Charlotte Lozier Institute. And I want to mention too, again, the Charlotte Lozier Institute, which is the research arm for the Susan B. Anthony list. I've mentioned them many times in the past. They're a great resource for a plethora of information on life and other issues that affect the church and the world. All right. So thank you, Dr. Aultman, again, for your witness and for your courage. Be assured of our prayers for you. Please pray for Divine Mercy Radio.
I will. And can I just ask that your readers pray today, because there's a case where Louisiana is suing the FDA, and they're hearing arguments today about the abortion pill.
Yes. So Louisiana, definitely. We'll pray. And actually, when this airs, it will have already passed. So maybe in anticipation for sure. All right. Dr. Aultman, thank you so much again for your courage, your honesty, and your willingness to share such a personal journey with us today. Your story is a powerful reminder that no one is beyond God's mercy, and that even in the midst of our most difficult choices, healing and redemption are possible. We're grateful for your witness and for the work that you continue to do in the defense of life. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this important conversation. We encourage you to keep Dr. Aultman, all medical professionals, and all those affected by abortion in your prayers. If you missed any part of this episode or want to catch up on past conversations, let me start that again. If you missed any part of this episode or want to catch up on past conversations filled with inspiration and hope, you can find them all at divinemercyradio.org. Just click on local shows. And don't forget, you can take FaithWorks with you wherever you go. Just download the free Divine Mercy Radio app from your app store. Simply search Divine Mercy Radio NC, and you're all set to listen anytime, anywhere. God bless.